welcome to World of Tanks with me, Jack the Ripper. And I don't really know how to describe this, because this is not exactly a tutorial video or anything like that. I guess this is almost like a reminiscing video. I suppose I don't even know that's a thing. So, I put some Guerrilla footage up the other day. It's really weird trying to talk in context to the way that videos are going up when they're not necessarily recorded in that order, because for once in my life, for once recently though, I am actually recording several videos at once. And yeah, so this is me playing the Guerrilla 15. This is actually one of my first games playing the Guerrilla 15 recently, and one of my first games playing it since it was nerfed. So as many of you will likely know, when the Guerrilla 15 came out, it had a higher velocity. I think it had probably a slightly better rate. I can't remember the exact changes, but they made a couple of changes specifically to the ammunition. And you can see quite early on, I'm struggling to hit a lot of shots at the very, very beginning because I'm firing at fast-moving targets, and I'm still not used to the velocity on this thing because they took 200-300 meters a second off it, which may not sound a lot, but you have to remember there's only about 300 meters per second difference between a derp gun and a shell you'd consider fast. So when you consider it like that, the change is quite drastic. So this thing goes from being a laser cannon to just being a bit of a fast shell, which is, I think, is a mistake. I don't agree with that change. I don't agree with a lot of changes, but I'll go on. I think I discussed that yesterday again, trying to remember which way order videos have gone out. We see here, there's a mixture of bad aiming, because like there I aimed too far ahead and expected him to do something, and he didn't do it. And then there's a couple where I'm just going to misjudge the shell speed. There, I didn't aim far enough ahead on that one. Ooh, heat round. Lovely. Now, there's a weird thing with the Guerrilla 15. I do find the gun annoyingly unreliable, and I do think the tank, I might be kind of, I'm probably not too many people agree with me on this. I think the tank needs a major buff. It either needs a rate of fire buff, or it needs an alpha buff. You might think, well, why is that? Well, this tank on PC, which our stats are very, very similar to, its prowess is obviously in its accuracy. And obviously I'm going to repair my tracks here because screw auto-loading French artillery. Especially when there's also 2 artillery. And there you go, they're platooned together. But yeah, so on PC this tank is balanced around the fact that the other TDs cannot compete with it in a lot of ways. So yes, you've got no armor, but you're fast. The camo's not great, but again, you're fast, you're not a huge target, blah, 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 blah. But the big thing around the gun is it's a very accurate gun. It's not the highest penetration. It's a very accurate gun, and it hits 750, and it hits a lot. Opposed to hitting very, very hard, it hits quite often. So you think, okay, well, right, that seems like a relative balancing factor. Yeah, except on PC, the things that this is balanced against, the 268, the E3, the E4, there we go, finally hit him. Those things do 750 alpha on PC. On console, for reasons that are beyond pretty much anyone with several brain cells, ours still have 850. Not only do they have 850, I'm pretty sure the E3 and E4 on console actually still fire faster, or have been buffed in ways over the PC variants of the same tank. So ours hit harder and just as often, if not more often, than the PC variants. At which point when you go, well, why has this thing got PC stats? I don't know. Ask the people in charge. But yeah, as a result, this thing, it's enjoyable to play. Things, you know, like that. That aim time, the accuracy. It's quite enjoyable to play. If I was trying to play in a way that I'm really trying to carry the team, trying to really, you know, be a threat on the battlefield, I would have to ask myself, why would I play this tank? Because it's got less armor than E3, E4, 268. I'm pretty sure most tier 3s have similar armor. Or more, probably more armor. But yeah, you get the idea. This thing does not have armor going for it. So, okay. You can't get in firefights, really. And if you can trade, okay. But the difference is that something like an E4 can often trade without taking anything in return. And when it does trade, it hits harder. So why would I take this over one of those? Ah, yeah, but it's more accurate. Yeah, but in one of the other tanks, you can be much closer, at which point the accuracy doesn't mean a damn. Yeah, well, okay, why would I take this? Oh, I wouldn't. That's the thing. I very much enjoy this tank, but in general, it's not really got anything going for it over those other tanks. But the one thing I have been enjoying and noticing while I've been playing it is there's a lot of shots which are hitting, which for a lot of other tanks wouldn't hit. And it's the reliability of hitting. So, admittedly, at the end of this game, you're going to see the ratio of my shots hit to miss. And I think I missed about 7 shots. But those 7 shots were more or less, there's the snapshot there, and there's then the shots at the light tanks where I'm completely misjudging their speed. Apart from that, it generally hits what you're aiming for if you fully aim. And it also generally pens what you aim for if you fully aim. And it's accurate enough that, in general, you aim for a weak spot, you'll probably hit the weak spot. You know, assuming you're not sat at like 600 meters, you're sat at a few hundred meters or something, you should be okay. Sat at these sort of distance, 380, there's a good chance you're going to hit where you're aiming for. Like earlier we saw the Death Star poke, I shot the Death Star's lower plate. You know, that sort of thing. And that generally is rare these days. And it's a weird thing, especially, so I've been getting footage for my Banshee review. Banshee is going to be one of the first things that I'm going to do I think I've talked about it a little bit. Hopefully I talked about it more yesterday. Oh, that, by the way, is why you do not stay in the same places as you've been all game. That defender has been there since the beginning, has shot from there repeatedly, and I just thought, it's a well-known spot. I wonder if he's still there. At which point I've just told my teammate, and my teammate had been reloaded. Probably could have got shots into him while he's tracked. But anyway. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing this new format, as I've talked about, where I want to do basically 3, maybe even more. Depends on how I decide to do it. At the moment, it's just going to be 3, where it's going to be a sort of a garage talk review, you know, the hypotheticals and all that sort of stuff. Then it's going to be a gameplay review, you know, showing the sort of thing that I've just talked about. So you've got the theory, and then you've got the practice. But that, obviously, the reviews generally tend to be the best. You know, you're going to see what this tank can really do. So the review is going to be, what can this do at its best? Don't do the side scrape against this thing. And then the guide will be in situations, will not necessarily be amazing gameplay, but they'll be there to specifically show off, you know, how to play in circumstances. So what do you do when you're top tier? What do you do when you're bottom tier? And I'm going to try and do one of those. But the thing is, I might eventually, if that's a popular format, people like the idea. By the way, watch this Foch bounce several shots off this defender. You see there? Shell flies off into the distance. Yeah, so at the moment I'm just going to do a bottom tier and a top tier. So you're going to say, what do you do when you're top tier? What do you do when you're bottom tier? Middle tier, you can kind of work it out yourself because it's a combination of the two. But yeah. And so yeah, 7,000 damages has been a good game. And what I've been finding when I've been playing this tank is the reliability of this gun, because it's so accurate, reminds me of pre-general accuracy nerf. And for those of you who don't know about the general accuracy nerf, either because you weren't here before, or because you just didn't know anyway, because I mean they didn't really publicise it until I think they tried to slip it in without telling anyone, and everyone went, "What's happened to this game? Things seem weird." And they went, "We don't know what happened. I don't know what you're on about." And then about 2 patches later, I went, "Yeah, we did this. Here are the full patch notes for that patch. My bad. We probably should have told you." And everyone went, "Yeah, you should." But one of the things I was finding with that is, you know, back then, Tiger, if I aimed at the lower plate of a T95 at, say, 500 meters, I would probably hit at least 3 out of 5, maybe 4 out of 5 shots on that lower plate, which was the whole point of having an accurate gun. If you had an accurate gun, you hit where you aimed. Now, doesn't happen as much, and without going into the details of it, I can do a full video on it if people are interested. But basically, whereas before the odds of hitting almost dead center were quite high, and then there was just like a sporadic area around dead center where you're going to hit within the perimeters of the aim circle, they made it so that hitting dead center became much less likely to happen. And so that now you're going to be more equally spread. You're still going to be relatively central. In fact, the odds of you still hitting the tank are probably higher than they used to be in a bizarre way. because officially, you know, before, the ones where they went to right on the outer edges of the circle were not very likely, but they did happen, and they went to really to the edges. Now it's a tad more evenly distributed, but the issue is that means is where you're aiming dead center is unlikely to be shot at. But yeah, so that meant, you know, you can't really do that with many tanks these days, but due to the size of the aiming circle and the accuracy of this tank, you do tend to get that with this tank. I've had a couple games where RNG really screws you over, but it's not a commonality, you know, whereas if I'm playing, you know, if you take the Russian light tank that I know Turkey is a massive fan of, and a number of people, the T100LT, the thing has so poor accuracy, it's practically got derp gun accuracy. I mean, it's 0.46. There are derpy guns in the game which have the same accuracy. In fact, it's nearly as close. I want to look at this. It's nearly as close to the 261, the Russian artillery, as it is to the Object 140. That is the extent of how inaccurate that tank is, which is ridiculous. And yet you will regularly hit shots. You will regularly hit shots regardless, and you'll hit them just as often as the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, which I believe has like one of the more accurate of those guns. You'll hit them just as often as a Object 140, which has something like 0.14 more better accuracy, something daft like that. Officially, hugely more accurate gun, hugely more accurate, but you'll hit just as often. Because over about 0.3, 0.32, I think accuracy becomes so unimportant, it's ridiculous. Obviously, at you know, ranges under 100 meters, then yeah, it'll start to make a difference, because that's the difference between your aim circle taking up just the lower plate, or just the lower plate and the hull and the ground. But at the ranges of 300, 400, the sort of average sort of engagement ranges you're going to be in, that's the difference between having the tank a third of your circle or a quarter of your circle, or, you know, a third and 4/30ths. It's so fractional. You know, actually, that was terrible, because 4/30ths is just over a 10. Anyway, 11/30ths was what I meant to say. Apparently, I can't do fractions. But you get the idea. It's such a minuscule change, no one cares. But playing this tank, I have been finding that reminiscent point. And I apologise that you've been staring at this end screen, but you can see 10 out of 11 hits went in. You know, it's of pens went in that hit. And then you take off the ones which were just wild shots, and you see generally I hit where I aimed. And that's not something you can say with most tanks. And you'll see in most of the videos I've done, any video I do with the Griller, you'll see that is generally the case. And so, yeah, I think this is just a tank that reminds me a little of the old days. Having been playing, you know, things like the Banshee, which are, you know, a Comet, but just slightly changed. And it's essentially a Comet with a more accurate gun. And yet it feels so much less accurate than the Comet that I used to remember. And I think those things are quite sad, and it's quite a pain in the rear end about these reskin tanks, is now remembering tanks as they used to be and how they are now. Well, let me know if any of you have also reminisced or bothered to watch on to this very much randomly longer point than necessary. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the battlefield.